Talk Time with Little Scholars every Saturday. Come hear the scholars. We learn, we laugh, and we share our minds from peace building to technology, education, current affairs, and social life. Find us on YouTube, Upperboards, and SoundCloud. We have got big ideas just waiting for you. With voices young and stories bold, together we shine, together we grow. It's Talk Time with Little Scholars. This is a project of Excellence Foundation for South Sudan. Let's build a world where young minds glow.
Dr. Jonathan R.C. Caulfield once said, and I quote, "The presence of full-time counselors can significantly enhance students' resilience and coping strategies, leading to better academic performance and overall outcomes. I therefore honor the debate moderator, secretary, timekeeper, the two competing parties, judges, the invited guests, invited school staff, and lastly, the entire guest house at large. Greetings. My name is Akech, the first mover from the team Affirmative and a senior fourth-year student from Brilliant Academy, here to affirm the resolution which reads, schools should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. First of all, who are full-time counselors? Full-time counselors are professionals who provide mental health support to assist individuals in managing their mental health on full-time basis. And again, we have to understand mental health support. Mental health support refers to a range of services and interventions designed to assist individuals in managing their mental well-being. So ladies and gentlemen, the resolution at large reads that schools should employ these professionals in order to assist individuals and students in managing their mental well-being. Well, beloved August House, hiring full-time counselors will help students to address psychological and behavioral issues with tools and strategies to cope up with challenges such as depression, anxiety, relation problems, career issues, and personal development. And we believe if we hire full-time counselors, all this will be achieved. Our perimeter is South Sudan, and the status quo is currently in South Sudan. Schools have never hired full-time counselors. Instead, they are using teachers, which has negatively affected them in so many ways. And that is the reason why we, the team Affirmative, have suggested that the schools should hire full-time counselors in order to help support these students. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Ministry of Education. Our budget is $2 billion US. Our time frame is a period of 1 year, in which we are going to begin and implement and create awareness within this period of time. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get our source of funds from the Central Bank of South Sudan, and we will first implement our policy in the government schools, and later on it will be extended to the private schools by the government. Beloved August House, to guarantee to you that this policy is more effective, it is that it has been used in several countries such as USA, Canada, Australia, and so many other countries, and it is succeeding. So we believe that since it has been used there, it will also work out in South Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, to lament on the team Affirmative case, I'll talk of increased mental health issues. Rates of anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues have been arising within students, and since they lack full-time counselors, it is continuously arising, and that is the reason why we say that schools should hire these full-time counselors, since we don't know the time emotions arise within students, and that is why we suggested this, so it will help them to keep more in their mental well-being. To lament on support for academic performance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, mental health significantly impacts students' ability to focus, retain information, and academic performance. And we believe it can only be achieved through hiring full-time counselors, and it will all be achieved. Ladies and gentlemen, to add on, I would like to pose the question to the team negators. If at all they are not convinced with this policy, they should come and tell us the disadvantages of full-time counselors in school. Well, and they should come up with a better idea. To summarize our team case, I talked of increased mental health issues. Under it, I said that full-time counselors can help to sort out things such as anxiety and depression. I also talked of support for academic performance. Under it, I said that full-time counselors can help to support students academically. Well, to conclude, school-based mental health services, including full-time counselors, are essential for creating a positive school climate and improving student outcomes. With all this, I beg to stop. Thanks.
To begin with, I would like to recognize the presence of Honorable Chairperson, who is the presiding officer, the Secretary, who is the pen holder, judges who are the body of judiciary, timekeeper who manages our times, plus the two antagonistic chambers who are debating for their rights. While not forgetting you, my dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Antino Tari from Golden Bridge Academy. I'm here to negate the resolution which states that schools should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. Ladies and gentlemen, the previous speaker did not define the key terms of the expectation, but let me give you more clue about the motion. Here we go. Schools are organized places or institutions where learning takes place. Hire means employ for a job. Full-time counselors are professionals who work for organizations such as schools and mental health clinics on full-time basis. And lastly, mental health support. Dear Haggis House, mental health support refers to help or service provided for individuals with emotions or psychological difficulties. Oh well, ladies and gentlemen, this policy motion is trying to tell us that schools should hire full-time counselors or advisors, in which we opposition party never agree with that. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I even came alone, but I came with my opposition members. Starting from me, I'm going to talk of high cost of schools and training existing staff for mental health support. After me is going to be Istira James, who is going to talk of no guarantee impact on students, risk of confidentiality, and prioritization of academic gaps. After her is going to be Aledo, who is going to talk of cultural and religious oppositions, and schools and mental health clinics and complexity of mental health. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to my points of argument. But first, the previous speaker talked of better academic performance and said when full-time counselors are employed, that this will bring this one better academic performance. But let me clarify to that. Let me bring to attention that when full-time counselors are employed, they are paid higher, isn't it? And when they are paid higher, there is a must that teacher salaries must be reduced. And when teacher salaries are reduced, then how do you think that this one teachers can teach effectively? If not, ladies and gentlemen, is there any doubt about what I said? If there is no doubt, then I submit my rebuttal through the moderator, well-educated judges, and back to the audience. So this brings me to my points of argument. To begin with, I will have training existing staffs for mental health awareness. Oh well, dear Haggis House, rather than hiring full-time counselors, the school should train the existing staff, such as teachers and administrators, to recognize and address mental health issues. For example, a report from National Alliance on Mental Health records that training teachers can significantly improve the ability to support students. And that's why we opposition party are saying that schools should never hire full-time counselors. Instead, they should train the existing teachers. To justify my point of view, ladies and gentlemen, according to National Alliance on Mental Health, records that the criticality of mental health can support the training of existing teachers. And that's why we opposition party are saying that schools should never hire full-time counselors. Instead, schools should never hire full-time counselors. Instead, they should train the existing staff. The moderator will bear the house and back to the audience. In addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, permit me talk of high cost to schools. Ladies and gentlemen, hiring full-time counselors requires significant funding, in which so many schools, especially public ones, don't. And if we all know that, then why do we need full-time counselors? Why do we need them when we already have teachers who are trained to teach students on both physical and mental? Ladies and gentlemen, for example, a simple counselor salary can cost more than 40 to 70,000 USD per year. And that's why we are saying that schools should never hire full-time counselors. In justification, dear Haggis House, a report from BMC Public Health shows that full-time counselors' salary can vary significantly, but the median annual is 61,000 US. And that's why we are saying that schools should never hire full-time counselors. The moderator via the code of jury and back to the audience. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, I have talked of high cost of schools, whereby I said hiring full-time counselors requires significant funding, in which so many schools, especially public ones, don't. And I also talk of training existing staff, whereby I said, ladies and gentlemen, hiring full-time counselors requires significant funding. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I'll call upon every audience or everyone in this building, ladies and gentlemen, to mandate comprehensive for teaching of teachers. And ladies and gentlemen, hate is a strong word. And I hate full-time counselors. I beg to raise my case. Looking forward to see you again.
In the words of Tina Swanson, an educational psychologist, said, investing in mental health support in school is not just an expense, it's an investment in the future of our children. Full-time counselors can make a different world. The panel of judges, the moderator, the secretary, timekeeper, staff, and teaching staffs, the invited school, to debating side, and my dear audience, good day. Awekura, my name is a senior 4 science student from Brilliant Academy. The main force of the team affirmative under a resolution that states schools should hire full-time counselors for mental health support, and I agree with that. Panels, well, before I go on, allow me to rebuild. My first speaker came and talked of a point of support for academic well-being. In part, we agree with that, because if we are to hire full-time counselors, then the welfare of our academy will increase in this way, because in a school we always have students that are mentally not good, and if we have full-time counselors, we are going to increase. If we have full-time counselors, we are going to increase the academic performance of the student. In this case, they came with teachers. How is it really? A master can't serve two at a go. In this case, if teachers are to serve, or if they are to work as counselors, then they will leave teaching and then work as counselors, because a master can't serve two at a go. Panels, to rebuttal
they say that the teacher salary will be reduced. But when our first speaker came, she came with a budget. What is the use of the budget? The use of the budget is to hire the full-time counselors. In this case, I don't see any salary of the teachers being reduced. So they are wrong on that side. That we should train the existing teachers. How? If we are to train the existing teachers, then we are going to leave teaching in this case, train them and make them to be counselors to advise kids on their mental issues. This thing can't work. We are going to hire full-time counselors for our betterment of schools and mental health. Panel, they came, this resolution of tonight is a policy, and they came with no status quo. So how are we going to know what is the current happening? Where did they do the current research? Or where did they find all of these points, ladies and gentlemen? Panels, to add on our team case, allow me to talk about creating a safer environment. Panel, counselors contribute to building a safe and supportive schools environment where students feel comfortable discussing their feelings and seeking help. And this will lead to a better mental health issue. If we are to hire full-time counselors, then it will be good for us, because if they are there full-time in school, they will support our kids mentally. To continue, I would like to talk of reducing stigma. Panels, a full-time counselor promote awareness of mental health issues and helps reduce stigma. Some of the students have stigma in school, and if there is no counselor, then what do we think is going to happen to them? Because they are saying we're going to hire teachers. In this case, if there are some issues of mental health, then the teachers are going to go to them and console them and leave teaching. Is this what the team negative is trying to tell us? I don't believe in this case. Even the students themselves will not accept their teachers to be their counselor and leave teaching for them, because they are personally in school for teaching, not for counseling. So we should hire full-time counselors instead of training these teachers and leave their teachers. To add, I would like to talk on collaborating with staff. Panels, counselors can collaborate with educators and staff to create a holistic support system for students, considering their academic and their emotional needs together. And this will help to a better mental health issues in this case. I don't see the team negative trying to tell us that we are going to train the teachers. How? It does not happen, and I've never heard of that. This policy was applied in USA and it worked. And what of South Sudan? How can it not work in South Sudan if it was applying a country? They tried this issue of training teachers, but it failed because it interrupt classes for students. That is why they brought this policy of hiring full-time counselors. So the USA succeeded in hiring full-time counselors. So we are trying. Is it because we are South Sudanese? We are trying what have failed in some countries? No, that won't make our country go forward. In summary, I talked about creating a safer environment in which I say it helps them discuss their feelings. Second, I talk of reducing stigma, in which I say it promote awareness and allow them to seek help. Third, collaborating with staff to create a holistic support for students. Conclusively, I might say, if you want your nation to be a great nation, if you want your kids' performance to go forward, if you want everything for them, if you want their mental issues to disappear, then hire full-time counselors for better mental health support, but not training our teachers that will affect the student in their academic. I beg to raise my case.
In my first place, allow me to address the presence of the moderator, the secretary, the judges, teachers, around invited guests, farmers, negators, while not forgetting the distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, before you is Estira James from Golden Brains Academy. Standard Tree Science here to negate the resolution which clearly states that schools should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. And I negate the resolution because of my following point of view. But before that, allow me to refute the point that one of the negators came with and the farmer battle about training existing teachers. They are farmers. Schools should not hire full-time counselors. Instead, they should train the teachers, because training existing teachers, it may reduce the money, like the salary they are giving, they are going to pay the counselor. This means that if they train the existing teachers, it will reduce the money which they are going to pay the salary, the counselors, and the money that they will pay the counselors. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to talk of prioritization of academic gap. Prioritization is a process of ranking task issues or goals in order of urgency so that the most critical ones are addressed first. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that the first priority in school is learning and teaching, but not counseling, because schools are still struggling to invest on book teachers and better teaching staff, which are the most important aspects in school at this moment. But if you farmers are saying that the school should hire full-time counselors at this moment, then I could say that it is the biggest joke of the year, simply because schools cannot, if you team of farmers are saying that schools should hire full-time counselors, then I could say that it is the biggest joke of the year, simply because schools cannot. For justification, ladies and gentlemen, according to ResearchGate, schools and institutions in weather districts may have more resources to hire a larger number of counselors, while those in poorer districts district struggles to even hire one, creating an important disparity in access. Ladies and gentlemen, we negators are saying that we need quality teachers, we need education, but not counselors, because they are meant to be conducted in hospitals and clinics. In addition to that, allow me to talk of no guarantee impacts on students. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be sincere to ourselves. Hiring someone doesn't ensure that the student will improve emotionally or academically without the border of the community and the family support. Ladies and gentlemen, counseling needs community and family, because they can have better understanding on the mental illness affecting students but not teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, this means that even if full-time counselors are hired in school, this won't bring any change, because we will not bring any change without
please. Honorable, you say that, okay, as you will employ teachers, won't it be of expense since it is out of their duty? You're going to employ teachers, right? You said you will train teachers. Don't you think it will be of expense, if at all, because it's not part of their duty?
Like training existing teachers, this may reduce the budget. Like schools will not be able to afford to give like salary to counselors, teachers, and also the school need to be developed, and this may affect the budget of the school. For justification, ladies and gentlemen, according to ResearchGate and Action in Urban Centers, hiring full-time counselors importantly contribute to improving mental health, but it's not a guaranteed solution on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, keep the fire burning. Allow me to talk of risk of confidentiality. Confidentiality is the principle of keeping information private and secure, ensuring that it is not disclosed to unauthorized individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, students might not trust school-based counselors due to fear that their information could be shared within the school or with teachers, or could be heard by other students, within the school, since the school is not safe for confidentiality. Ladies and gentlemen, take an example. A teacher may expose an early pregnancy of a student, and this is not good. It may lead to shame or self-stigma. For this reason, we strongly negate the resolution. For justification, ladies and gentlemen, according to DeepSeek, limited access to resources like training technology and support staff can further exacerbate the challenges counselors face, contributing to burnout and decreased job offers. Ladies and gentlemen, in summary, I have talked of prioritization of academic gaps, whereby I say that schools should not hire full-time counselors because they are meant to be conducted in hospitals and clinics. Not only that, but also I have talked of no guarantee impact of South Sudan, or no guarantee impact on students, whereby I say that schools hiring someone doesn't ensure that the student will improve emotionally or academically without the border of the community support. Lastly, I have talked of no risk of confidentiality, whereby I say that students might not trust school-based counselors due to fear that their information could be shared within the school. Conclusively, ladies and gentlemen, I call upon all schools to implement a tight support to model utilizing part-time counselors for general guidance and academic partnership with external community for mental health agencies to provide a specialized clinical services for high-need students. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to rest my case.
Panels, in the words of a well-known therapist named Alan Johnson, he once said, and I quote it, long-term impact. Full-time counseling is the key to reducing long-term impact on mental health issues. You realize that schools that have employed long-term, full-time, schools that have hired full-time counselors have provided the support that students need to strive the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness. Well, I recognize the moderator, the panel of judges, the timekeeper, the invited schools, the secretary, the two debating side and resolution. Dear August House, good day. I am Honorable Adut Angelina Akech, a senior for arts student, debate affirming under the resolution which reads, schools should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. Well, I am going to talk of early intervention, crisis management, long-term well-being. But before I go deeper into my views, let me rebuttal the all team case of the team negative. They came here and talked about a lot of things, but let me first enlighten you on the things that they are contradicting about. The team negatives, the first speaker came here and talked of them, a team case of training the existing teachers so what can happen so that they can provide counseling to the students. That was the first speaker. The second speaker came here and told us that people are supposed to be given counseling in the hospital. Now tell me, are we debating with one person? I do not think so, because they are contradicting. Coming with hospital and coming with training the existing teachers. What are they really standing for? I do not know what they're standing for. Well, they came here and then they say that, let me first go to the point of clash resolution. They talked of training the existing teachers. But I want to tell you something. These teachers are employed in the school to teach, not to come and counsel people. You have to understand the difference between teaching and counseling. And then if I am to enlighten you on this, since you said that they're going to employ the teaching teachers, the existing teachers, I want you to tell me clearly. The negators came here and say that the expense of the payment is going to be too expensive. These teachers that are going to be employed to counsel people, aren't they going to expect salaries? I think they are going to expect salaries. And if they are going to expect salaries, this is not expense. It is expensive, obviously. And then again, they say that it will reduce the salaries of the teachers. Well, I want to tell you clearly, in a school, if there are 9 teachers and the 10th teacher is added, the salaries of the other teacher is not affected because each and everyone came on its own being. So I want to tell you, hiring full-time counselors in school will not reduce the salaries of any teacher. Well, to go into my views of argument, I will talk of early intervention. intervention. A full-time counselor can anytime identify and intervene at early stages of mental health problems, potentially preventing more severe issues, of which these are the benefits of hiring a full-time counselor in school. Again, on crisis management, in times of crisis, having a dedicated mental health professionals on staff as a full-time counselor can help manage situations more effectively, providing immediate support to students that are in need. And this is why we want to employ or hire full-time counselors in school. Again, on long-term well-being, you realize that hiring a full-time counselor can result into a highly and consistent mental health. This hiring does not only favor one in school, but it favors one for a lifetime. It favors students for a lifetime, and these are the benefits of hiring full-time counselors. I want to tell you today, as the farmers, hiring full-time counselors is not of negative impact. Well, in summary, I talk of early intervention, which I talk of intervention of early signs of mental health. On crisis management, I talk of providing immediate support to students in need. On long-term well-being, I talk of guiding why through the life cycle.
You say that when the training existing staffs, that it cannot reduce the budget of teachers, isn't it? But let me clarify it with that. Let me bring to your attention that when full-time counselors are employed, they are paid higher, isn't it? And when they are paid higher, then this will now reduce the teachers' budgets.
Now I get you.
I'm still talking.
And you're taking my time, so please hurry up.
Okay, I'm saying that. And when teachers' counselors are reduced, there will never be effective teaching. And when there is no effective teaching, then how do you expect
I get your question. I get it now. You can have your seat. Now I want to tell you something. If we have 9 teachers in the school and then the 10th teacher is employed, do we reduce the salaries of the existing teachers? I do not think we do reduce them. So this is the same thing that is going to happen if we employ full-time counselors. They are not going to reduce the salaries of the existing teachers. Why? Because each and every one of them came to work purposely for the duties that were assigned to them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to say that.
Okay, my dear recurrent speaker, you talk of we team negators are saying that full-time counselors should not be employed because they reduce teachers' salaries. To bring into your attention, my dear recurrent speaker, when full-time counselors are employed,
You're asking a question or you're saying a statement.
Excuse me.
We're out of time. No.
When full-time counselors are employed, as you know, in our country, South Sudan, we have economic issues. Schools like Darling Wisdom Academy can afford to employ,
and that is the reason. Now you're consuming. You're given specifically 20 seconds to ask a question. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you today, it is the government that is going to provide this budget. It is not the schools that are going to provide. We say that they are going to be the government school to provide this, right? And if they are going to provide, do you think the government of South Sudan will fail to bring the budget that is needed to employ full-time counselors? I do not think the government will fail. That is the reason why our policy must work. Ladies and gentlemen, conclusively, constant presence of a counselor can be of a great impact to one's mental health. So why don't we employ them to come and work in school so that students that are traumatized, students that are having a lot of stress, will have the access to people that will help counsel them so that they won't run mad. I want to tell you today, students have stress in South Sudan, and for this, we have to make sure that we employ or hire full-time counselors in school so that their mental health is well supported. With all this, I rest our case.
In my first place, I would like to recognize the presence of Honorable Chairperson, the Secretary, judges, timekeeper, invited guests, teachers around, visitors, negators, and farmers, while not forgetting you, my dear beloved listeners, and the house at large. My name is Adut Angelina Akech, a senior 2 student from Golden Brains Academic Secondary School, is standing before you this evening to come and negate the resolution that says schools should hire full-time counselors, of which we team negators don't count with the resolution because of my following views. But ladies and gentlemen, before I go further, I would love to refute some of our points that were rebutted by the opponents. My dear opponents, you talked of when the full-time counselors are, we talk of when full-time counselors are employed in schools. It is expensive. To make you understand, my dear opponents, full-time counselors, when they're employed in schools, it leads to high charging of students, whereby schools like Darling Wisdom Academy will afford to hire qualified counselors, and schools like Peace Secondary School cannot afford. That's why we team negators are saying that counselors should not be higher in schools. Ladies and gentlemen, you also talked of it reduces the stigma. My dear opponents, to make it clear for you, teachers are like parents in schools, whereby whenever there's a problem with a student, it is not shameful for a teacher to know. And also, it's the teachers who knows where the problem starts and parents. So in that case, we don't need counselors to do that because mental issues are meant to be conducted in the hospitals. To go into my point of argument, I love to talk of complexity of mental health. Ladies and gentlemen, mental disorders such as trauma, madness, and deep depression require clinical care, but not school-based support. Ladies and gentlemen, school counselors are not meant to handle complex disorders. For this case, students may not get the treatment they truly need. For justification, school counselors are trained to help with stress, not to treat psychiatric conditions according to APA analysis. For this reason, we team negators lock horns with this resolution. For justification, according to National Association of School Psychologists, it states that, according to the American School Counselor Association, the recommended student to counselor ratio is 250 ratio 1, but the national average in the US is closer to 450 ratio 1. For this reason, we team negators disagree with the motion. Ladies and gentlemen, to go into my
Honorable Speaker at POI.
You're welcome.
Well, as the team negators, can you tell us your stand?
Okay. As we team negators, we are saying that employing counselors in schools should be abolished. Reason being is that counselors are meant to treat or are trained to help with stress, not to treat psychiatric conditions. And we are not saying that hiring counselors is bad or improving mental health is bad. It is okay, but we don't want counselors to be employed.
Honorable Speaker, POI, please.
You're welcome.
Honorable, currently as we're speaking, our parents and our teachers are giving us words of advice. What would you say about the fact that currently a lot of children are negatively affected mentally?
Okay, I agree with that. A lot of students are affected mentally, but to be honest with you, dear opponents, counseling doesn't help a student who is helped mentally, but medication helps. That's why we team negators are saying counselors should not be hired in schools. Ladies and gentlemen, to keep the fire burning, I would love to talk of schools are not mental health clinics. Ladies and gentlemen, schools are academic institutions but not health centers. They should focus on learning, not therapy, because if the school focus on therapy, then learning may be compromised. Ladies and gentlemen,
You say the school is not a clinic. So are you trying to tell us as students?
I continue? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that teaching and learning are the primary focus in schools, not therapy. For example, teachers already take roles as social workers, disciplinarians, and now mental health supporters. It would overload the schools and quality education would be compromised. For this reason, we team negators strongly lock horns with this resolution. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, cultural and religious opposition. Ladies and gentlemen, culture refers to anything to do with beliefs, customs, and ways of life, while religious refers to beliefs, faith, and worship of God and denomination. Dear August House, some parents believe that mental health support should be handled at home or through spiritual or religious methods, but not in school. For example, madness cannot be handled in schools, but at home or through spiritual or religious powers or rituals, simply because many schools in Juba or South Sudan do not have psychiatric centers for treating mad people in the conservative or traditional communities. For this reason, we team negators strongly negate the resolution. In summary, I had talked of the following complexity of mental health, where I say that mental disorders such as trauma, madness, and deep depression require clinical care, not just school-based support. And also, schools are not mental health clinics, where I say schools are academic institutions, not health centers. And lastly, cultural and religious opposition, where I say that parents believe that mental health should be handled at home or school, at home or through spiritual or religious methods, but not in school. Ladies and gentlemen, to sum everything up, I love to say that one falsehood exposes 1,000 truths. Therefore, I call all of you, my audience, to stand up for the truth, which is to prioritize teaching and learning that South Sudanese need most at the moment, but not counseling. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to raise my case.
Thank you very much. That is the last speaker. Let's call upon the replied speeches. We'll begin with the negators.
Oh, well, this guys really made my day, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, I would love to recognize the presence of Honorable Chairperson, who is the presiding officer, the secretary is the pen holder, the judges who are the body of judiciary, timekeeper who manages our times, plus the two antagonistic chambers who are debating for their rights. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to give a general summary of our points. We have talked of high cost to schools, whereby we say rather than hiring full-time counselor requires significant funding, in which so many schools, especially public schools, don't. And we also talk of training existing staffs, whereby we say, ladies and gentlemen, rather than hiring full-time counselors, schools should train the existing staff, such as teachers and administrators, on mental health issues. And we also talk of prioritization of academic gap, whereby we say that schools should not hire full-time counselors because they are mainly to be conducted at hospitals but not at schools. And we also talk of no guarantee impact on students, whereby we say, ladies and gentlemen, hiring someone does not ensure that students will improve emotionally without the support of their parents. And we also talk of risk of confidentiality, whereby we say, ladies and gentlemen, whereby we say the information could, whereby we say students could fear to share their information to the counselors because they can fear that their information will be shared. And we also talk of complexity of mental health, whereby we say mental health disorders such as madness and many others are mainly to be conducted at hospitals but not at schools. And we also talk of schools are not mental health clinics, whereby we say, ladies and gentlemen, schools are academic institutions but not health clinics. And we also talk of cultural and religious opposition, whereby we say, ladies and gentlemen, schools should not hire full-time counselors because your mental health support should be handled at home or in religious places but not at school. So, ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, I would like to put more effort on my point. I have talked of training existing staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that when full-time counselors are employed, there will be no room for existing teachers, and that's why we are saying that training existing teachers can significantly improve their ability to support the students. Ladies and gentlemen, not only that, but my colleagues also talked of prioritization of academic gaps. But ladies and gentlemen, we all know the most priorities in schools are teaching and learning. And why are you guys telling us that we should hire full-time counselors? Ladies and gentlemen, we don't think that we agree with that. So to begin with, the previous speaker talked of support for teachers. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, there is no need of hiring full-time counselors, because when we hire full-time counselors, I think there will never be support for teachers. And when there is no support for teachers, then how do you think that this support can come in? I don't think that, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, they went to the extent of giving us 5 examples, and within this example, we do not see even where they have relationship with their evidence or with their points, null and void. It's better the debate of facts than the debate of good English. Give us facts. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we think the Get Us call upon schools and audience to mediate comprehensive training for all teaching staffs in foundational mental health. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to raise my case.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I just arrived on the stage here, I believed that I was going to debate. We were going to debate with one team, but it shocked us by seeing us debating with 3 good teams under 1 negators. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the team negators came with a contradiction, 3 good contradictions, ladies and gentlemen. The first speaker came with the idea of training the existing teachers for counseling. Again, the second speaker came up saying that it should be done in hospitals, not in schools. Don't you believe that there are 2 teams now? The third speaker also came up with a policy. She said that they will abolish these counselors. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at all this, there are 3 good team stands. And we believe for a debate, you must have 1 team stand. So we believe we are winning today's debate. Again, to lament on their weaknesses. They came up, they said that they never came up with a budget, and we believe that it is a policy motion. They should come up with a budget in order to implement something, but they never brought it. They even failed to bring a house. Where are they coming from? They never brought it. They didn't even come with a time frame. They never even answered the questions we stated. So we believe that this team negators here are really contradicting, and they have never understood the motion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they also came up with these weaknesses. They say that training the existing staff, that it will reduce the salary, like the salary of teachers will be introduced. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this, we say it clearly that an individual came for one specific goal. So we believe that it will never reduce, but they fail to understand that. They said that these teachers, this counseling should be done in hospitals. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they say that mental counseling should be done in hospitals. That school is not a mental health, a mental health place. But if you see this, mental health doesn't mean that if somebody is mad, it can mean depression, anxiety, career issues. But if you employ these counselors, it will help to also help the student, but they never understood that. Well, they also talked of that it will increase stigma, that if a person is maybe cancelled, the person will feel that his or her secrets will be exposed. But if you see this, if a person is not cancelled, the person will always having stress, leading to stigma, continuous stigma, and that is why we suggested that So I believe that this team was on our side. We suggested that they should be brought in order to help the student to reduce the stigma, but they said it will increase the stigma. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they said that we never came with facts like evidences. If, to assure you, do they really understand the word guarantee? Like countries such as USA, we brought them. As you all know, these countries are using this policy. So that is already an evidence, but they never understood it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize our points, we talked of support for academic performance. Under it, we said it will help students to focus. We talked of increased mental health issues such as depression, anxiety. They will all be addressed. We talked of creating a safe environment, where we said that full-time counselors will build a safe environment for students. We talked of reducing stigma, whereby we said full-time counselors will help to reduce the stigma by creating awareness. We talked of collaboration with the staff, whereby we said full-time counselors will work in hand with educators and staff to help relax the people's minds. We talked of early interventions. We said that these full-time counselors will help to identify the signs at the early stage. We talked of crisis management, whereby we said that these full-time counselors will help to provide immediate support to students in need. We talked of long-term, whereby we said guiding one through lifetime will be provided by the full-time counselors. But also to add on, this team failed to identify the point of clash, which is training the existing staff, and it was won by the team of farmers. We'll stop there.
You have been listening to Talk Time with Little Scholars, where young minds speak loud and proud. Catch us every Saturday on YouTube, Upperboards, and SoundCloud, brought to you by the Excellence Foundation for South Sudan, giving children a voice, one episode at a time.